She was frightened of going alone. Oh, how frightened. She was white as the snow. She was trembling. She went as though to the scaffold, but she went, without looking back, resolutely. She had evidently determined to put it to the test at last. Would those sweet, amazing words be heard when I was not there? I saw her, pale, her lips parted with horror, get into the sledge, shut her eyes, and saying goodbye forever to the earth, set off. WHRR, word the runners. Whether Nadenka heard those words I do not know. I only saw her getting up from the sledge, looking faint and exhausted, and one could tell from her face that she could not tell herself whether she had heard anything or not. Her terror, while she had been flying down, had deprived of her all power of hearing, of discriminating sounds, of understanding. But then the month of March arrived. The spring sunshine was more kindly. Our ice hill turned dark, lost its brilliance, and finally melted. We gave up tobogganing. There was nowhere now where poor Nadenka could hear those words, and indeed no one to utter them, since there was no wind, and I was going to Petersburg for long, perhaps forever. It happened 2 days before my departure. I was sitting in the dusk in the little garden, which was separated from the yard of Nadenka's house by a high fence with nails in it. It was still pretty cold. There was still snow by the manure heap. The trees looked dead, but there was already the scent of spring, and the rooks were cawing loudly as they settled for their night's rest. I went up to the fence and stood for a long while peeping through a chink. I saw Nadenka come out into the porch and fix a mournful, yearning gaze on the sky. The spring wind was blowing straight into her pale, dejected face. It reminded her of the wind which roared at us on the ice hill when she heard those 4 words, and her face became very, very sorrowful. A tear trickled down her cheek, and the poor child held out both arms as though begging the wind to bring her those words once more. And, waiting for the wind, I said in a low voice, "I love you, Nadia." Mercy! The change that came over Nadenka. She uttered a cry, smiled all over her face, and looking joyful, happy and beautiful, held out her arms to meet the wind. And I went off to pack up. That was long ago. Now Nadenka is married. She married whether of her own choice or not does not matter, as secretary of the nobility wardenship, and now she has 3 children, that we once went tobogganing together, and that the wind brought her the words, "I love you, Nadenka," is not forgotten. It is for her now the happiest, most touching and beautiful memory in her life. But now that I am older, I cannot understand why I uttered those words. What was my motive in that joke?